You have no idea what that smile actually meant. And the fact that you dismissed it is exactly what this is about. There is a signal that younger women send to older men that gets misread almost every single time. Not because the men are oblivious, because they were never taught what is actually happening in that moment beneath the surface. And the psychology behind it is far more layered, far more honest, and far more actionable than anything you have heard before. Most men over 50 have been told their entire lives that younger women who smile at them are simply being polite, that the warmth is social courtesy, nothing more. That is one of the most quietly damaging assumptions a man can carry, because it causes him to shrink from moments that were genuinely open, to retreat from possibilities that were real, to write himself out of a story before the first page was even turned. Stay with this until the fourth point, because that is where the real psychology lives, and it is the part that will completely reframe how you understand every interaction you have had and every one that is coming. If this is already stirring something in you, tap the like button right now, because what follows is something most men will spend their entire lives never understanding. This channel exists to reveal the hidden psychology beneath what women actually feel, actually signal, and actually want, and to give men the language to meet that honestly. Social psychologists studying cross-generational attraction have identified a phenomenon they call the competence halo. It is a well-documented cognitive bias in which the brain automatically assigns higher levels of emotional security, directional clarity, and relational depth to individuals who visibly carry the marks of lived experience. Dr. Susan Fiske at Princeton University, whose decades of research on social cognition changed how psychologists understand first impressions, found that these assessments are made within seconds and operate almost entirely beneath conscious awareness. A woman does not decide to find an older man compelling. Something in her neurological architecture makes the assessment before her conscious mind has formed a single thought. But here is what most of the conversation around this topic gets wrong. It frames this entirely as physical or status-based, as though what she is responding to is simply gray hair or professional achievement. That is the surface reading. The deeper truth is that what she is actually responding to, what that smile is often communicating, is something far more intimate and far more specific than most men realize. This is not about manipulation. It is not about games or tactics. It is about understanding the real psychological language being spoken in moments most men walk right past. And understanding it changes not just how you receive those moments, but who you become inside them. The first layer of what that smile is really saying has to do with what researchers call emotional predictability. And it is more powerful than almost anything else in the architecture of early attraction. Psychologist Dr. James Pennebaker at the University of Texas spent years studying what draws people towards certain individuals in social environments. One of his most consistent findings was that people, and women in particular, are drawn toward those who emit what he called low social volatility. Not passivity, not boringness, but the specific atmospheric quality of someone who does not need the room to go a particular way in order to feel okay. Someone whose emotional temperature remains steady regardless of the social weather around them. Younger women, particularly those in their 20s and 30s, live in a social landscape that is often highly reactive, emotionally volatile, full of men whose confidence rises and falls with every signal they receive. When a woman in that landscape encounters an older man who carries genuine stillness, who smiles without performing, who listens without leaning, who occupies space without needing to fill it, something in her nervous system registers it as profoundly different from what she is used to. And that registration often shows up as a smile. Not a polite smile, a genuine one, the kind that surprises even her slightly. What she is communicating in that moment, beneath any conscious intention, is this: you feel safe to be near. Not safe in a boring way, safe in the way that solid ground feels safe, in the way that a room with good bones feels safe. Her nervous system is recognizing the presence of someone who is not running on anxiety. And in a world full of men performing confidence, the real thing creates an effect she cannot always name but cannot ignore. Imagine this. You are in a room at a professional gathering. There are men of various ages talking, networking, moving through the space with varying degrees of effort. And in the corner, there is an older man, not doing much, not working the room, simply present, speaking when he has something to say, listening fully when someone else is speaking. A younger woman across the room notices him, not because he has done anything to attract attention, but because his presence has a quality the rest of the room lacks. She smiles when their eyes meet, and he, conditioned by decades of assuming that smile is just politeness, nods and looks away. What he does not know is that in that moment, she was hoping he would hold the eye contact just one breath longer, because she was checking whether he felt it too. That is emotional predictability in action. That is her nervous system communicating something real. And most men over 50 have been trained by their own insecurity to dismiss it before it even lands. Now we go deeper, because the second layer of what that smile is communicating is something even fewer men understand. And it is where the real shift happens. Psychologists call it the maturity contrast effect, and it is one of the most honest and least discussed dynamics in cross-generational attraction. A younger woman who has spent years in a social world dominated by men her own age has accumulated a very specific library of experiences. She knows what it feels like when a man is more interested in how he is coming across than in what she is actually saying. She knows the particular exhaustion of being around someone whose ego requires constant management. She knows the way a conversation with someone who has not yet figured himself out can leave her feeling more alone than before it started. When she encounters an older man who does not have these qualities, who is not performing, not competing, not requiring her energy to sustain his sense of self, the contrast is not subtle. It is enormous. And the smile that results is not directed at his age. It is directed at the relief of encountering someone who has already done enough living to be simply, quietly, entirely himself. Dr. Arthur Aaron's research on the psychology of attraction consistently found that novelty in relational dynamics produces stronger emotional responses than familiarity. And for a younger woman, a man who genuinely does not need her approval to feel complete is neurologically novel. He is breaking a pattern her brain has come to expect. And as we explored in an earlier video, pattern breaks create attention. Attention creates interest. And interest, when met with the right kind of steady presence, can develop into something far more significant than a passing smile. A woman in her early 30s once described an experience at a reunion where she found herself in conversation with a friend's father for nearly 2 hours. She said she had gone into the evening with no particular expectations, but she said there was a quality to talking with him that she had almost never felt before. She said he never once made the conversation about himself, but when she asked him about his life, he answered with a directness and a quiet honesty that she found almost startling. No performance, no self-promotion, no searching for her reaction to calibrate what came next. Just honest, unhurried answers to honest questions. And she said she drove home that night thinking about it for reasons she could not fully explain. That quality of presence had done something in her that 100 charming younger men had never managed. That is the maturity contrast effect speaking. That is what is underneath the smile that older men keep dismissing as politeness. And here is what this means practically. If you are an older man who has been minimizing the signals you receive from younger women because you have assumed they could not be genuine, you have been operating on a false premise. The signals are often exactly as real as they feel. What has been missing is not the interest on her side. It has been the willingness on your side to receive it without immediately shrinking from it. This is about understanding, not about pursuing anyone past their comfort or misreading basic social warmth as something it is not. If your intention is not honest, none of this will work. Women sense everything. But if you are a man of genuine depth and steady presence, the psychological dynamics we are describing here are working in your favor in ways you have probably been too conditioned to recognize. If this is landing for you, subscribe to this channel right now. Every video here takes you deeper into the real psychology beneath what women feel and signal. And what comes next in this series is something you will not find anywhere else. Now we arrive at the third layer. And this is where most conversations about this topic stop, which is precisely why most men never get to the truth. The third layer of what that smile communicates is something psychologists call the permission signal. And it is one of the most misunderstood dynamics in human social interaction. Research on nonverbal communication, including foundational work by Dr. Albert Mehrabian at UCLA, established that the vast majority of emotional communication between people happens beneath the level of words. Not just through tone or body language in the broad sense, but through micro-expressions, shifts in orientation, changes in the quality of attention. Women, who are generally socialized from childhood to be more attuned to these signals, send and receive them with extraordinary precision. A genuine smile directed at an older man is often, at its deepest level, a permission signal. It is an invitation. Not necessarily a romantic invitation in an explicit sense, but an opening, a signal that says, I see you. I am not threatened by your presence. I am curious about you. I am giving you permission to enter this space and show me who you are. Most men over 50, conditioned by years of absorbing cultural messages that they should feel grateful for any attention from younger women rather than simply present to it, receive this signal and immediately do one of two things. They either over-respond, becoming suddenly more animated, more trying, more eager, which collapses the very quality that created the signal in the first place. Or they under-respond, nodding, looking away, retreating behind the assumption that it could not have meant what it felt like it meant. Both responses share the same underlying problem. They are reactions driven by the need to manage something rather than simply meet it. And what a permission signal requires is not management. It is presence. A quiet, steady, unhurried recognition that says, I see you too. Imagine this. You are waiting in a coffee shop. A younger woman 2 tables away has glanced in your direction twice. The second time, a small, genuine smile arrives before she looks back at whatever she is reading. In that moment, most men would experience a brief internal flutter of uncertainty and then convince themselves it was nothing. But what it is, in psychological terms, is an open door held briefly ajar. She is not proposing anything. She is simply signaling availability to connection, to a real human moment, however brief. And the man who meets that signal with calm, unhurried eye contact and a quiet, unperformed smile in return, without needing it to become anything more, is the man whose presence she will think about later, because he met her signal without collapsing under it, without needing it to mean more than it did, without shrinking from it. He simply received it, steadily, completely, like a man who knows his own worth. This is what so much of the psychology of older male attraction comes down to. Not performance, not strategy. The simple, rare, deeply compelling quality of a man who knows himself well enough to be present without agenda. A word of care here. Understanding these signals is not a license to project intention onto every smile from every woman. Social warmth and genuine interest exist on a spectrum, and the most emotionally intelligent response to any signal is to simply be present and let it develop naturally rather than to interpret and pursue. What we are talking about is removing the false ceiling of assumption, the conditioned belief that you are past the point of being genuinely interesting to younger women, because that belief is psychologically unfounded. And it is costing you real human connection. The fourth shift. This is the one that ties everything together and reframes not just how you read these moments, but how you inhabit yourself inside them. Psychologists who study what they call self-concept clarity, the degree to which a person has a clear, confident, and consistent understanding of who they are, have found that it is one of the strongest predictors of both social magnetism and relational depth. Dr. Jennifer Campbell at the University of British Columbia, whose research on self-concept has influenced decades of work in social psychology, found that individuals with high self-concept clarity are perceived by others as more trustworthy, more stable, and more genuinely interesting, regardless of age, regardless of conventional measures of attractiveness. What this means in practice is that the most powerful thing an older man can do, not just in the context of attraction, but in the whole landscape of his social presence, is to become more fully and unapologetically himself. Not a louder version of himself, not a younger version of himself, simply the most settled, the most honest, the most completely inhabited version of who he actually is. Because here is the deepest truth about what younger women are responding to when they smile at older men. They are not responding to the age. They are responding to the settledness. They are responding to the quality of a man who has stopped needing the world to confirm him and started simply living from his own center. That quality cannot be manufactured. It cannot be performed. It can only be grown. And the extraordinary irony of it is that the years most men have spent regretting, the years of gray hair and slower mornings and accumulated losses, those are precisely the years that built the thing she is responding to. The settledness, the depth, the quiet, unmistakable gravity of someone who has actually lived. None of this works without genuine care. This is about understanding, not advantage. A woman who smiles at you is a human being offering a real moment of human warmth. What she deserves in return is the full, grounded, honest presence of a man who receives it with the same reality she sent it with. Most men will never understand what we covered today. They will continue to dismiss the signals, continue to shrink, continue to write themselves out of their own story because they were never given the language to read what was actually being communicated. But you are here, you stayed, you are asking the questions that matter, and that tells me something about you that has nothing to do with your age and everything to do with your willingness to grow. Drop the word gravity in the comments if this shifted something in you. It tells me that this reached the place it was meant to reach. And share this with a man who needs to stop shrinking from what is already being offered to him. What comes next in this series is going to take everything we just explored and show you exactly what to do in the first 60 seconds after a woman sends you a signal. What to say, how to carry yourself, and how to let the connection deepen naturally without ever once performing. You will not want to miss that one.